والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Second louder salawat in honor of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Third, with your loudest voices, in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Why did Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam not fight the Umayyads? Why did he never raise a sword against any of the Umayyad caliphs or any of the Umayyad soldiers? We know that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam throughout his life, in one way or the other, lived under Umayyad rule. That even when he was only a few years of age, the Umayyads had taken over the Islamic empire. And yet the Imam had seen a number of their most prominent caliphs, especially from Yazid onwards. The Imam lived for 34 years after Karbala. In these 34 years after Karbala, we never hear for a single moment that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam ever used the sword to rise against injustice. Because the it word, no doubt, in the Shia world today and throughout history has always been that it's our role that we must rise against injustice. That the Imams of Ahl al-Bayt have taught us that we have to always rise against injustice. When you see a zalim and someone who takes the rights away from the people, then your role is to try in one way or the other rise against them. Many of us, of course, saw what happened at Karbala and then straight away automatically concluded that Imam al Husayn alayhi salam's way would be our way. We would be called Husaynis forever. Somehow his son didn't go that way. While many of the followers of Imam al Husayn headed in that direction, the son of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam never picked up a single sword against any of the zalims of his time. When he doesn't pick up a sword against any of the zalims of his time, any of the oppressors of his time, oppressors who are known for different forms of oppression, as in some of them have enacted genocides against children, or have enacted genocides in certain Muslim lands, most notably Mecca and Medina, for example. Are there two holier lands in the religion of Islam than the lands of Mecca and Medina? No, there isn't. Today, if in the Muslim world you see a land where people face genocide, or where people face an attack, automatically you'll hear people saying that the path of the Shia has to be the path where we speak out against any genocide, where we even have to eventually militarily defend ourselves against the oppressor. But Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, 34 years after Karbala, does not decide that the Dhul Fiqar, which we believe in Shia theology, is in his inheritance, is in his possession, doesn't raise this sword at all. Why then would we follow Imam al-Husayn's Karbala and not Imam Zayn al-Abidin's seeming pacifism? Because if you were to look at the Imam does not ever come to tell a group of people, let's all go and rise against Yazid. Okay, Yazid dies. After Yazid, his son Muawiyah comes into power, dies. After them, the Marwanid side of Bani Umayyah all come into power. You all know your Abd al-Malik bin Marwans and all of their Hajjaj bin Yusufs and so on and so forth. All of them come into power and an imam is alive. What's the duties of an imam? Duties of an imam, as we know, an imam is a divine guide chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who ensures that he protects the message of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon his family, gives the correct teachings of the Holy Quran, teaches us the morals through either theory or practice, and ensures that the message of the religion of Islam remains alive. And if the imam sees dhulm take place, then the imam may have a duty to speak out against that moment of oppression or those years of oppression. Further, to add to that, is that the Shia, of course, have a belief that their imam is the strongest man alive. Yes? The Shia believe, all the way to different theologies within the Shia, is that nobody is as brave as the imam. Their first imam of the Shia was, of course, that imam who fought in all those battles, undefeated in all those battles. And then, of course, Imam al-Hasan and Imam al Husayn, alayhim as-salam, one only looks at their bravery, for example, at Jamal or at Siffin as an example, and then later battles. So all of these imams, the first three in particular, have a history of raising a sword to at least defend themselves. But then the fourth of them decides that for 34 years, while being imam, as soon as his father died in Karbala, decides that we will not raise a sword. Now, many comparisons are made by people about Bani Umayyah then and Bani Umayyah now. Yazid of then, Yazid of now. Tyrant of then and tyrant of now. Always you hear these comparisons that are made. When these comparisons are made, today we are told that we must rise against Yazid. We must rise against Umayyah of our time. But then, what if the man who lived in their time never rose? Of course, it doesn't help the situation that his son didn't as well. And then his son, 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 and then his son. And so what doesn't help is that Imams number 4 to 11 don't rise against the Yazids of their time. We are meant to rise against the Yazids of our time. Because today, every Shi'i will have an opinion on what should be done politically in the world. Every single person under Mimbar gives an opinion to those on Mimbar. So the ones under Mimbar will say, this one doesn't speak out. This one speaks out. This one betrays. This one is not speaking for justice. This one did not boycott a shampoo. This one did not, for example, eat this chocolate. What are the people? Everybody gives their opinion under the Mimbar as if they have studied the whole seerah of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. And every Imam of Ahl al-Bayt has a Karbala. Every single one has a Karbala. Imam al has a Karbala. Imam al-Baqir has a Karbala. Imam al-Rada has Karbala. Imam al-Hadi has Karbala. And you know, these guys lived under the worst guys. They lived under either the Umayyads, or in the case of Imam al-Baqir onwards, you'll see from Imam al Sajjad, these people live under the Abbasids. The Abbasids are worse than the Umayyads. Yes. It's one thing being stabbed, for example, in the front, but to be stabbed in the back by your own cousins is even worse. So the Abbasids, the Imams lived under them, but where is the use of the swords of the earlier Imams? Especially there is something intriguing about Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. From the moment Imam al-Husayn leaves the land of Medina until he gets to the 10th of Muharram, how many hadiths have you ever heard discussing a sentence of Imam Zayn al-Abidin in those 6 months? From Medina all the way until Karbala. So we're talking from Rajab until Muharram. How many times do you ever hear Imam Zayn al-Abidin say anything at all in those 6 months? How many hadiths do we have that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, for example, like his brother Ali al-Akbar, or Muslim bin Aqil, or, for example, others of the family, they all have a dialogue, don't they? They have a dialogue with their father, with their cousin, with their uncle. On the way to Karbala, they stopped here. Qasim discussed, Akbar discussed, Muslim discussed. They all discussed one way or the other from Medina all the way to Karbala. Except Imam Zayn al-Abidin. He has no discussions. Never do you find from Medina all the way until Karbala does Imam Zayn al-Abidin say anything. Never does he discuss with his dad. The max you might get is a line or two of poetry on the night or on the day of Ashura. Max. About what life is and how much it betrays you. Otherwise, where is Imam Zayn al-Abidin's presence in all of this? Why are there those who are not ma'soom in the sense of theology, that we have the 12 Imams? Why are there more words from the one who is not an Imam as such according to designation, more than the Imam who's ma'soom himself? So therefore there's a number of question marks that are posed. Because people until today raise the questions either that if you're an Imam you could see dhulm. We are told when we see dhulm we must oppose the oppressor and support the oppressed. Aren't we told that? Isn't that in the wasiyah of Imam Ali alayhi salam? Who knows Imam Ali better than Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam? Nobody knows him better than Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Yet Imam Zayn al-Abidin seemingly doesn't want to ever pick up a sword. And that's why this particular dynamic becomes fundamental even more by one issue. Bear with me in this introduction. In Al-Kafi, there are a number of ahadith where Imam Zayn al-Abidin talks about why he pledged allegiance to Yazid. Now, one of the problems in the Shia world, which we, insha'Allah, are working on improving, and this is all part of our growth and evolution, is that we are now slowly going to become more aware of our books and more of an understanding of our books. Most Shia will not own Al-Kafi. Forget have read Al-Kafi. Reading, put that on the side. That's difficult. That's one you need a mentor and a guide and so on. But owning Al-Kafi, we don't. Many of us are not readers. We're not a generation of readers. We want quick 30-second reel, 1 minute reel. Quickly, give me the message quickly. I don't want to be patient like maybe our dads and our granddads were when they would sit patiently for a drop of ilm. Because of that, sometimes there's hadiths in our books and the hadiths really, they put a spanner in the works. But if you don't know your books, then you get dumbfounded. So when someone comes and tells you, but Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam pledges allegiance to Yazid on more than one occasion, either he or Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam mentions that the reason my dad gave bay'ah to Yazid was because of the following. Now for the Shia mind, this turns everybody upside down, I think. And you have to bear with me because we'll go into the analysis shortly. But the mind gets turned upside down. Number one, can I give bay'ah to a tyrant? If I could give bay'ah to a tyrant, can conflict resolution be done with tyrants? Imam Hassan, Muawiyah did one. Did Zayn al-Abidin do one with Yazid? If they done it with Yazid, how does that affect me in 2025? But can I say a word? If I don't say a word, do I say a word? But can I not say a word? What if people will call me a traitor, betrayal, kill me, ostracize? The problem is, most who give opinions are under mimbar, not on. And sometimes the ones on have a particular direction that they want everyone to only follow. And so it's either our way or the highway. Either you follow everything that I say about Islam and the way I view Islam. And I've always been a believer. When you give a majlis, what you are doing is you're presenting art. A person can appreciate some of the colors. They don't have to agree with everything you say. This is not an agreement game. Okay, I'm not ma'soom, never will be. There's only 14. Never add any more to 14. Yes? Those 14 are the only ones. Everybody else, when they give you an opinion, that opinion is relative. Relative to their research. Relative to their worldview. Relative to their current political climate that they live in. A Shia living in London views the world different from a Shia living, for example, in Pakistan. A Shia living in India views the world different from a Shia living in Bahrain. We all view things different. And we're all at different moments in our developments. And so were the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. One Imam of Ahlul Bayt lived in Medina. Another lived in Kadhmiya. Another lived in Samarra. Another lived in Mashhad. You think all of their politics is going to be the same? It's impossible. The vision and direction ultimately is one to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the vision and the roles may differ depending on the situation. Either, now when this happens, if Imam has pledged allegiance to Yazid, because I heard there was this poor Pakistani Maulana last year, he had discussed something along these lines. The one who's a pharmacist, or the one who is, for example, under the mimbar, he works as in property or something, is now debating the Maulana who studied the subject. And said, you have to stick to your day job. Because if you do open your mouth, you end up touching on areas which are not your field. In the same way, I cannot touch on areas which are not my field. This poor man, like others, they get ostracized. How could you say that Yazid gave, or that Imam gave bay'ah to Yazid? Muhabibi, it's in my books. Yani, what am I meant to do? Burn my books? If it's in Al-Kafi and you're telling the whole world, and of course the other conundrum for the Shia is what? Is that there are some Shia who believe all the 4 books, all the hadiths are to be accepted. So when you go to the Akhbari school, and the Akhbari school, some of them, not all. We do not want to generalize because there's many colors. And it's not right to generalize because there's amongst the people different researches. But within the Akhbari school, there was a current that believed the 4 canonical works, Al-Kafi and the Faqih and Tahdhib al-Ahkam and Istibsar, every hadith within there is to be taken. So now what do I do? If there's a hadith within there that says Imam Zayn al-Abidin gave bay'ah to Yazid and I'm an Akhbari, I'm in difficulty. If I'm not an Akhbari, do I? Now this is fundamental before I enter my analysis. When I look at such hadiths, do I try and dissect them to preserve haqq or the way I was brought up? Now there's a problem. When I dissect an issue, do I dissect a theological or historical issue to preserve what my mum and dad have raised me with or what the book says? Because I've got to be true to haqq as well. I as a Shi'i have to also be truthful to haqq, not just hold on and protect because I am inherited a religion which I need to protect. Many times people may do theology wrongly and insincerely. When the haqq is presented to them in hadith or in a book, they جَعَلُوا أَصَابِعَهُمْ فِي آذَانِهِمْ, as the people of Nuh did. Put your fingers in your ears. I don't want to hear this. But you have to hear it. Why? Because your kids have access to the net. And they have access to Sheikh GPT. Yes? And they can go and click anything they want. And then straight away they will see these things. And then the onus and the responsibility comes on me later. Because the onus and responsibility will be like, why didn't you guys tell us Imam Zayn al-Abidin pledged allegiance to Yazid? Why didn't you people say? You don't need to blame the people under mimbar here. They are doing their day jobs. But the people on mimbar have to open these things up without being worried. Why be worried about an issue? Everyone has different political situations. There are different political slogans and banners and roles that we all have to play that the prophets played as well. Therefore, tonight I'd like to open this discussion inside out. We are in Arbaeen. It's the period of Zayn al-Abidin. And it's the period he deserves the most respect and the most analysis. And I'd like to do this in the following stages. Number 1, did Imam Zayn al-Abidin fight in Karbala? And if he did, which hadiths indicate that he clearly did? Number 2, after Karbala, why did Imam Zayn al-Abidin not protect the ladies who were raped by Yazid's soldiers in Medina? And as an Imam, aren't you meant to protect anyone facing a genocide at all times? Number 3, and what of the traditions that mention that the Imam remained silent while his father stood up? And how could an Imam remain silent when he sees dhulm occur in front of him? Number 4, how does Imam Zayn al-Abidin discuss, as well as Imam al-Baqir, a bay'ah to Yazid? And what could be the contradictions in such a bay'ah? Number 5, what was Imam's opinion when Mukhtar led a political revolt? And does that show that sometimes the Imam may not be at the front, but may support what could be a face of a political movement? Number 6, if Imam didn't rise against the tyrant of his time, does that show a wisdom that a previous Imam had shown? And number 7, how did the Imam decide that sometimes conflict resolution is the best course of an action for a shattered Shia community post-Karbala? Let's examine this and dissect the topic in complete depth. So we move from Medina, we get to Karbala. Day of Ashura, now there's a question being raised. Imam Zayn al-Abidin is in his 20s. He's in a great age to fight. Why does he not fight? What many of us have always wondered about, and even those sitting on Mimbar, is one issue. When does the man fall ill? Because if he falls ill a couple of months before, you could still recover from an illness 2 months before. If you fall ill a week before, you could still recover from an illness. I'm even going to add a spanner in the works and say, even at your most ill, and you're in a very difficult moment in your life, if your dad's alone, wouldn't you muster whatever you can to stand up and fight? Let's be real. Your dad's alone. There's a huge battlefield. There's a bunch of animals and lower than animals who are about to face him. Yep. What would you do? You'd stay in a tent, or you try your hardest to even get up. Some people, when you ask them, so what was wrong with him? Say he was ill. Yeah, which illness stops you defending your father? Which illness stops you defending your father? I think you have to have been really, really unwell. And unwell to a level where there surely must have been even some injuries on your body. And that's where it's interesting. The two people indicate that Imam Zayn al-Abidin may have been ill, but also injured in Karbala. If he is injured in Karbala, that means he fought in Karbala. Because for many, while they don't want to say it, it doesn't make sense that Imam Zayn al-Abidin doesn't fight. Surely he would come forward and fight. You find that a couple of people address this. One, interestingly, Tabari in his Tarikh mentions how Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam and Abu al-Fadl, for many of us when we were brought up, we were told Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas did not fight in Karbala, which is nonsense. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas fought and fought and fought. But when, for example, he was amongst the last to go towards the battlefield, that's when Imam told him about water, for example, for the children. Otherwise, before that, Abu al-Fadl, it doesn't make any sense that Abu al-Fadl just watches 7th Muharram, 8th Muharram, 9th Muharram, 10th Muharram, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas just standing there. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Tabari says, Ali ibn al-Husayn and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas went together and had a skirmish with the opposition by the water of the Furat. And this may have been the last time water came to the tents. Maybe around the 7th or 8th of Muharram, and they lived off that for the next couple of nights. Tabari doesn't mention which Ali ibn al-Husayn. And you know, Ba'ad Imam al-Husayn, may Allah bless him, he loves to just name his sons Ali. Yeah? And so that makes it very complicated. And that should be an indication to all you guys as well. Every family has to have many Alis. Yeah? You have to have Alis. Don't fall for this nonsense on Google. You type cool Muslim name and all that rubbish. No, don't fall for that. You just keep naming Ali as much as you can. Yeah? Imam al-Husayn, he himself could name 1,000,000 words from the Quran. He says Ali Akbar, Ali Asghar, Ali Zayn al-Abidin. Otherwise, he could have named 1,000,000 words from the Quran, which are beautiful Arabic words and so on. But Ali, Ali, Ali. Tabari says Ali ibn al-Husayn and Abu al-Fadl went to retrieve water. On the one level here, we have an indication. There is an Ali ibn al-Husayn who has gone with Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam to go and get some water for the army. What adds to this is the companion of Imam al Sajjad alayhi salam, Fadl, the son of Zubair, or Fadl, the son of Zubair, who mentions that لم يبقى من رجال الحسين عليه السلام إلا علي ibn al-Husayn. No one remained from the army of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam except who? Ali ibn al-Husayn, Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. كان مريضا, he was ill. وافت كان مريضة. What did he then say? He goes on to mention something very interesting. وَقَدْ أَرْتُثَّ يَوْمَئِذٍ مِنَ الطَّعْنِ. And he had become wounded that day from being stabbed. Wait. I'm raised to believe that Imam al Sajjad was ill in Karbala. What it seems is that while there's a group of sources that mention dharib, and that a stomach pain affects Imam al Sajjad alayhi salam, stomach pain is intense. But when your dad's alone and he's the Imam chosen by Allah, there's got to be something deeper. What happens here is that Irbili, he has this famous book, كشف الغمة في معرفة الأئمة. Irbili, he has this book. Many of you would have heard of it, كشف الغمة. He mentions within the literature that Ali ibn al-Husayn قد أرتث. أرتث, what does it mean? It could have three meanings. One meaning is what? Is that you find someone who's living while the others are dead. The second is wounded. The third is someone who's been taken as a prisoner but was not killed. If we put these meanings together, Imam Zayn al-Abidin was a wounded person taken as a prisoner who was not killed. Which means that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam most likely was injured in fighting in Karbala. The depth of the cuts of the injuries and the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, above all of this, we can all think we're planning. Allah plans that Imam continues through Ali ibn al-Husayn. True? Why? When after the battle of Karbala, you know, people say Allah did not let them kill Imam Zayn al-Abidin. No, Shimr bin al-Jawshan said, La'natullah alayh. Shimr said, kill him. Karbala finished. Shimr said, kill him. Hamid bin Muslim was amongst those who said, listen, the guy's injured. What's he going to do to us? Look how deep he's injured. And that's where Shimr said, okay, leave the guy. What's he going to be of any use? That injured. Now, Imam Zayn al-Abidin's ill. You're not going to say he is ill, leave him. Clearly, there is a deeper wound that's affected Imam. If you put that together with Tabari's description that Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam went with Ali al-Akbar, went with Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas towards the Furat, then that Ali ibn al-Husayn could have easily been Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. And the fact that Irbili says that Imam Ali ibn Husayn was the last person to be remaining, the last man standing, but he was wounded, indicated that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was ready to fight for his father, but he had been injured. And therefore the idea that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam did not fight at all in his life, automatically we remove that. But the second problem is what? Some people say, but he lived after Karbala and Yazid was in power. Why did Imam Zayn al-Abidin not raise his sword on other occasions? Imam himself judges what's best for the community. Notably, people ask this question in relation to which incident? 2.5 years after Karbala, the famous incident of the Harra. Harra means the rocky terrain. In Medina, you had a group of people, 2 years after Karbala, revolted against Yazid, the people of Medina, and the people of Mecca, led by Abdullah bin Handala. And Abdullah bin Zubair, they revolted against Yazid bin Muawiyah. When they revolted against him, Muslim bin Aqaba or Musrif bin Aqaba, that person led his soldiers towards Medina. Now, here's the situation. These people are going to enter Medina with like 25,000 soldiers. The people of Medina, there's no way they have that many soldiers ready, but they've revolted against the Sham government. And they've kicked out the governor of Medina, and they want a new government. Similar to what Kufa was planning against Yazid. Okay? When they came therefore to attack, there's a major question here. Why did Imam Zayn al-Abidin at this moment not lead the Medinian troops? Imam Zayn al-Abidin, 2 years after Karbala, Yazid is still in power. There's about to be a mass genocide. Does Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam rise or not rise? Here's an interesting point. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, according to some, if we are all meant to be Husayni only, Karbala'i fighters against injustice, then we have to ask Imam Zayn al-Abidin, why aren't you just fighting against injustice? This is a chance to topple the Umayyad government. Umayyad government, they come into Medina. You know what they do in Medina? If you read the books of history, they rape the woman of Medina. They go around raping women. And then any lady who's pregnant, they cut the stomach, they take fetus out. Yeah? That was what was happening. That's a genocide. You agree? It's a genocide. Thousands of people are killed. But Imam Zayn al-Abidin doesn't really speak out. And he doesn't raise a sword. And it's an interesting moment. Why not speak out? Why not raise a sword? Why not say, let's go like my father? My father was butchered, but he spoke out, he stood with a sword. Imam doesn't. If you read the books of ahadith, it's very interesting. Imam actually takes a neutral stance. He has a house, outskirts of Medina. Any one of the people who seek safety from this pillaging, he welcomes all of them. Even whether you know Ahl al-Bayt, you don't know Ahl al-Bayt, ladies are all told, come and stay with us. Even there are hadiths that mention Marwan ibn al-Hakam and his family. He's seeking, the guy who's one of the perpetrators of fitna, but in that moment sought help from Imam Zayn al-Abidin. From who? From Abdullah bin Handal and Abdullah bin Zubair's army. Imam allowed this side to come and seek sanctuary, and he allowed that side to seek sanctuary as well. Why, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, then do you not rise with the sword? Why don't you topple Yazid's government? This is fundamental, this question. You see, when an Imam does something, firstly, know that there is a precedent by either an Imam or a prophet before them. Nabi Harun, when Moses went to collect the tablets, Nabi Harun was with Bani Israel. Samari made Bani Israel worship the calf. Nabi Harun at that moment, why did he just unsheath the sword and say, you know what, let's fight, let's kill, let's just go all out? Nabi Harun knew, number one, we are outnumbered. Number two, if there's another option that will safeguard the good people, then I'll prefer that option than see innocents killed. Number two. Number three, he is a ma'soom chosen by Allah who knows what to do. You do not tell a ma'soom what to do. This is a huge line. Because the ta'ah of ulil amr, the ta'ah of Ahl al-Bayt, is not easy. Listen, it's not, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when the Imam returns, I pray that I have the ability to submit blindly to my Imam. Honestly. My Imam, ma'soom Imam. I'm not talking people like me, non-ma'sooms who make mistakes and sin and so on. I'm talking Imam of Ahl al-Bayt. I pray that I'm not one of those who's like, who are you? Where did you come from? What do you think you are? And so on. And not like the Ahl al-Bayt don't welcome questions. Of course they welcome questions. But when Nabi Harun alayhi salam saw a very difficult situation, people around him were saying, say something, say something. Wait. If I say something, it will cause a bigger conflict and many will die and so on. Nabi Harun alayhi salam, he looked at it. And one may argue, one of the reasons the Prophet said, Ali is to me like Harun was to, because Imam Ali faced a similar situation. Imam Ali, after Saqifa, you think Imam Ali couldn't have just taken Dhul Fiqar out and said, let's go and fight? So with Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, and my problem is this is in my literature. Now someone says, well Sayyidina, not everything in Shia books is sahih. We don't have sahih like Sahih al-Bukhari. Yes, it's true. But what's interesting is that there are hadiths which are authentic within our literature that even reach a stage where Yazid, this is in Al-Kafi, Yazid enters Medina on the way to Hajj. When Yazid enters Medina on the way to Hajj, he meets this Qarashi guy and he tells him, you give me bay'ah as you are my slave. Not the slave, not God's slave, you are my slave. So the person's like, listen, my dad's better than your dad. I'm better than you. So Yazid, then he goes to him, so what, are you telling me to be your slave or Allah's slave? He said, your slave. So I'll never be your slave. So Yazid said, then we'll behead you. And so they behead this guy. Yazid then goes to Imam Zayn al-Abidin and he says to him, you give me pledge of allegiance to become my slave. Otherwise, you'll be beheaded. Otherwise, you will be what? Beheaded. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin in Al-Kafi, he pledges to Yazid because otherwise he'll be beheaded. On the one hand, the Imams before Imam Zayn al-Abidin, each one faced a difficult moment where they had to change the course for the sake of the Ummah. Is that true or no? Yes, Imam Ali, Sahifa, Imam al-Hasan, Muawiyah. Yeah. So on the one hand, if a Shia wants to say, no way, then you've got a problem justifying the previous Imams. On the other hand, there's a problem here, and sometimes you pick up these contradictions. What is it? Yazid, after Karbala, never went to Hajj. The hadith is in a Shia book. The sanad is a good sanad, but there's a problem with the historical accuracy. Yazid never went to Hajj. Yazid, after Karbala, stayed in Sham. He died in Sham. He never went to Hajj. The hadith says Yazid met Imam Zayn al-Abidin in Medina on the way to Hajj. But Yazid never went to Hajj. So there is no meeting between Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Yazid. And so there is a major question mark whether Imam was forced to pledge allegiance to Yazid. Had I not noticed, by the way, Yazid on his way to Hajj, then there'd be a problem and a dilemma on the one hand. But on the other hand, I must say this. Imams of Ahlul Bayt, whatever they do, if they rise, I submit. If they sit still, I submit. I'm going to give you a wonderful hadith where our Imam says, we are like stars. Each of us sometimes rises, each of us sometimes are hidden. When Allah orders us to rise, we rise. And when Allah orders us to be patient, we remain patient. Yeah? Because rising is not always wisdom. And they are the people of hikmah. They are the people of wisdom. Rising, which puts your people in danger. Rising, which causes loss of lives of the Shia. Not every rising and every speaking and every lauding and every is logical and wise. Today, even in the Shia world, we have so many pure-hearted people, so many. And they mean well. But not every time you jump in every city, we all have to copy each other. Some of us live in areas where we can. Others of us live in different situations. As long as, of course, your heart bleeds when you see oppression. And not, I'm just going to turn a blind eye. But when an imam rises, we submit to that imam. And when imam sits, we sit with that imam. And hence the Prophet said, Hassan and Husayn are imams, whether they are sitting or standing. Because some people try to make it out that Imam al Husayn is braver than Imam al Hassan. No. Imam al Hassan saw the wisdom of the Shia. We have to do a sulh with Muawiyah. Today, if you say to a Shia, do sulh with Muawiyah, what would they do to you? Today, if you told a Shia, do sulh with Muawiyah, what would they do to you? Wallah, they'll... Well, the problem is, they make it sound like every Imam lived exactly the same life. Every Imam didn't live the same life. They lived with the same message. But the life and the roles and the situations are different. And that's why if anyone says Imam Zayn al-Abidin was anti someone rising with a sword, no. Because Mukhtar al-Thaqafi is an important example. Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, he rose 5 years after Karbala. And he is the one who orchestrated the killing of Ibn Ziyad and Umar bin Sa'ad and the rest of all of those perpetrators of the crimes on the 10th of Muharram. Did Imam Zayn al-Abidin, according to some of our hadith, say, Rahimallah al-Mukhtar. May Allah have mercy on Mukhtar. If Imam Zayn al-Abidin was against soldiers rising at some moment, then he would never, ever have given sanction or legitimacy to Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. True? He would have turned around and said, we are against. But Imam Zayn al-Abidin knew that there are certain people I publicly praise. Others, if I don't publicly, outwardly, always say it, doesn't mean I don't feel. Of course I feel it if one of my men is killed or if someone doesn't avenge what happened on the 10th of Muharram. Of course I feel it. But there is a time for the sword and there is a time. And that's why the Shia have a dilemma. The Shia, which dilemma do they face? Is every day Ashura and every land Karbala? I'm not sure. Number one, it's not a hadith. So if it was a hadith, okay, I have to follow what the Imam says. It's not a hadith for me to have to follow it blindly. Number two, someone's going to tell me, no, but there's 17 different interpretations. Okay, cool. There's many interpretations of it. But number three, every Imam has their role. And the highest Imams are who? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hasan. Unless we've forgotten the order. Many Shia today, you ask him, what are you? He says, I'm a Husayni. Why aren't you a Hassani? What did Imam Hassan do wrong to you? Has he done something wrong to you, Imam Hassan? There is no day. This is Shi'ism. There is no day like Abu Abdullah's day. That's Imam al-Hasan's own words. But Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Husayn are Imams whether they sit or they stand. Some currents of Shi'ism decided that political, military outspokenness was a current. Other currents of Shi'ism went to a different direction. Others amalgamated. Same way Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam saw his father, Karbala, saw Yazid, saw Bani Umayyah, saw what was best for the Shia and decided what's best for the Shia? We're a few number. Let's rehabilitate a shattered community. What do we mean shattered? Community was shattered. The Shia, as shattered as one may argue, even now we're in a difficult position. Wallah, I feel for the Shia of Lebanon especially, wallah. Yani the Shia of Lebanon are in a difficult position. Difficult position. One way, and across every border they're in a difficult position. I don't know, this one is a difficult one. Yani Allahu A'lam how this one gets resolved. Because every border is a difficult. This one enters or this one enters. Depends. I don't know how it's going to happen. Allahu A'lam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help all the oppressed. But the Imam, he saw a shattered community. A community that Karbala had broken. The Shia were broken after Karbala. But what's the role of the Imam? The Imam will inspire you to find Allah. And he did that in a Sahifa Sajjadiya. He reminded everyone, talk to Allah. Whatever problems we face, while Allah is around, ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. We have our master, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever armies will face us, whatever we may be a community of only 3, 4, 5, 10, one day you'll see we will be a community of millions who shout, Ya Husayn. True? And imagine at that time, people were like, fight, rise, sword, kill. So relax. First start, build again. Build. Build number two with risalat al-huquq. Let everybody know the haqq of their Lord because they've forgotten the haqq of Allah. And a community that forgets the haqq of Allah on us, that community is a dead community. Because the haqq of Allah, if it's not observed, then everything else becomes little. The first haqq, the haqq of Allah, the haqq of the nafs, the haqq of the eyes, the haqq of the tongue, the haqq of the stomachs, the haqq of the private parts, then the haqq of our parents, the haqq of the non-Muslim. Imam Zayn al-Abidin one by one rebuilt Islam. Or if not rebuilt Islam, what did he do? Please note this down. Bani Umayyah's Islam was going to remain forever. Let me make clear to you. Karbala didn't finish Bani Umayyah's Islam. It remains. It's there till today. Anyone who tells me Bani Umayyah's government ended, Bani Umayyah is still here. But Imam Zayn al-Abidin offered you an alternative Islam. The true Islam. That Islam is still there, Bani Umayyah. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, that will always be there. That will remain. But the pure source of Islam, he offered through Sahifa Sajjadiya. Some called it a book of dua. It's not. It's a book of aqaid, which he put in dua. A book of aqaid in what? In dua. And risalat al-huquq. And all these ad'iyah you read, all of you. Dua makarim al-akhlaq. Dua at-tawbah. Look at these wonderful du'as that we recite. Honestly. Are there du'as like these du'as that we recite? And all of these du'a, Abu Hamza al-Thamali, raise a generation where you teach them tawheed in its truest form. Not the tawheed of Yazid and the tawheed of those who would come afterwards, but the tawheed of du'a Abu Hamza al-Thamali. And all of these other ad'iyah that you read, slowly he built and he built and he built. You didn't need to go around fighting and blood and so on and so forth. Rather, you rebuild. And look, we are, inshallah, the seeds of that building. The seeds of what he laid down. We are the fruits of those seeds that have grown until today, the beautiful Islam of Zayn al-Abidin, of Sayyid al-Sajjadin. Until today, wherever you go in a Shia household, you'll see Sahifa Sajjadiya. And in Laylatul Qadr, you'll hear Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. And you'll see who was victorious. Where's Yazid's du'as? Where's Muawiyah's teachings about Tawheed? And look at Zayn al-Abidin's. They're absolutely everywhere. But for someone to say he didn't use a sword at all, I reply with one line. And that is for me to conclude by saying that sometimes the sharpest sword is the sword of the tongue. As a person can cut you with their tongue viciously. Yes? جرمه صغير, جرمه ثقيل. Weight of the tongue is so light, but the power of the tongue is devastating. And sometimes it needs one man to make sure that when he used his tongue in Sham, he made clear to everybody that whatever tenants and building blocks they're trying to destroy in Sham, with one sermon, I'm going to make sure they remain alive. And he used his tongue as a sword. What was the building blocks they tried to destroy? They tried to destroy the presence of Fatima al-Zahra, and Hamza bin Abd al-Muttalib, and Ja'far al-Tayyar, and Hassan al-Husayn. He's the one who said, Allah gave us excellence in 7. From us is the Holy Prophet. Imagine, I say this to you, you're all my lovers. He's saying it in Sham, next to Yazid. From us is the chosen prophet. From us is the lion of Allah. From us is the mistress of the woman of paradise. From us are the masters of the youth of paradise. So the first thing you've destroyed, they want to destroy these people's merits. You are mentioning their names in the lion's den. Yes? You're mentioning Hamza. This guy's grandma had chewed his liver. Now you're bringing his name in his very house. Yes? That's cut with the sword. The second thing is you make sure that Rasulullah is the highest, not Yazid's grandfather. Yeah? Yazid wanted to raise his grandfathers as the highest. Later, Ashyahi bi Badrin Shaidu. Imam Zayn al-Abidin said, I am the son of the man who was taken to Sidrat al-Muntaha. I am the son of Muhammad al-Mustafa. Someone might say, why does he need to mention Mi'raj in Sham? Because the Umayyads were spreading the idea that the Mi'raj was in a dream. It wasn't real. So in Sham, I'm going to say it was real. And he was taken to Sidrat al-Muntaha, Muhammad al-Mustafa. That's number 2. But number 3, how do you cut someone the worst? Is when you begin to recite the fada'il of the man they hate. And you recite his fada'il one by one in Sham. I'm the son of Ali al-Murtada, the man who fought for La ilaha illallah. I'm the son of the believers, pious one, descendant of the prophets, annihilator of the polytheists, commander of the faithful, glorious of the worshippers, honorable of the criers. I'm the son of the man who fought the disbelievers until they said La ilaha illallah. The man who was constantly assisted by Jibreel and Mikael and did not disbelieve in Allah for even the twinkling of an eye. Your grandfathers, they start off rubbish, then they come. Whereas my grandfather never disbelieved in Allah, never worshipped an idol, never bowed down to an idol. And he continued to cut the sword by saying the lion of Hijaz and the master of Iraq. Mekki, Madani, Khayfi, Aqabi, Muhajiri, Shajari, and one fadila after another of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then to add insult to their injuries, he recited Masa'ib al-Husayn in Sham. That's a sword. Yes? To recite Masa'ib al-Husayn in the middle of the enemy's backyard. Yes? Because he said, I'm the son of the inheritor of the Mash'arain. I am the son of the father of Hassan and Hussein. Then he mentioned, and I am the son of the purest of women, Fatima al-Zahra. And I am the son of the man who lay on the earth of Karbala, whose body lies on the earth of Karbala, surrounded by the wildebeests. Yes? Yazid knew you could have bought 1,000 swords. They would not have been the same as Zayn al-Abidin's tongue. He said, cut him, recite the adhan. When they recited the adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Imam looked, he said, of course, Allah is the greatest. Then, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, he said, my skin, my eyes, my body, my flesh, all testify that there is no God but Allah. Then he heard the lines, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He then looked towards him, he said, oh Yazid, is Muhammad your grandfather or is he mine? If you say he is your grandfather, you're a liar. But if you say he is mine, then why did you butcher his grandson? Then why did you butcher his grandson on the plains of Karbala? That butchering of his father remained in his heart forever. One hadith narrates he would never finish drinking a glass of water until his tears had mixed with the water he was drinking. How much love do you have for your father that every time, all of us love our fathers, and those of you whose fathers have passed away, you cried for your father, and you may every once in a while cry. But I ask you, have you ever reached a stage where the tears from your eyes, they mix with the water that you drink? Yes? 34 years after Karbala, every time he would drink a glass, he would drink water, the tears would mix with the water that he would drink. The worst thing about when your father dies is that there are certain places you remember something with your father. Yes, those of you here who've lost your fathers, I'm going to leave tonight for you, inshallah. There are certain places they bring back memories. There are certain places they evoke memories. There are certain places they break your heart. Amongst them, no doubt, the maqbara, the qabristan, yes, the graveyard. Especially remembering your father and the way he left the earth. And that's why one day in the graveyard, when he saw in front of him a man who was there working, he said to him, oh man, when I die, will you bury me? He said to him, yes, O grandson of Rasulullah, of course I'll bury you when you die. He said to him, oh man, my father lay on the earth of Karbala for 3 nights with no one to bury his holy body. Another time he saw a man about to slaughter a sheep. He said to the man, have you given water to that sheep before you slaughter it? He said, of course, O grandson of Rasulullah, we would never allow for there to be an animal to be slaughtered without water being given to it. He said, my father lay on the earth with no one to quench his thirst. One day in the streets of Medina, he heard a man call out, Ana al-Gharib, Ana al-Gharib. He came to sit by the man. He said to the man, when you say Ana al-Gharib, you're a stranger. When you say this, is it because you have no water to drink? He said to him, no, I have some water here next to me. Maybe no food to eat. He said, I've got some food here. Maybe you don't have much family. He said, I've got some family around. He said, then oh man, never call yourself a gharib. A gharib is someone who dies with no one to quench his thirst and no family to bury his body. My father is the gharib. He lay on the earth of Karbala with no one to look after his body. I assume that for many years he would continue to cry, but it would stop at a certain point until Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam himself said, he said, it was even when he was dying, there was only one man in his mind when he was dying. You'd think it was about himself or about his sons or about his grandchildren. He said when the poison of the Umayyads surrounded his body, he was on the bed, the poison was all over his body. So he said, I came like any son would come. I hugged my father Zayn al-Abidin on his chest. He said the moment I hugged him, I saw him begin to cry in a way like I've never seen him cry. Now he's seen him cry for 34 years. What is it about this moment that breaks him? He said that I looked at him, I hugged his chest. I said to him, Father, why do you cry? In a moment you'll see Rasulullah. In a moment you'll see Fatima al-Zahra. In a moment you'll see Amir al-Mu'mineen. In a moment you'll see Imam al-Hasan. In a moment you'll see Sayyid al-Shuhada. Why do you cry, father? The reply in Karbala especially breaks our heart. He said to him, Muhammad, 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 I cry because when I'm dying you're on my chest. Allah. I cry because when I'm dying you're on my chest, whereas you know who sat on the chest of my father when he was dying. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Raise your hands, my dear brothers and sisters. Ya Allah, raise us with the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa zaman. Allow us to be amongst those who complete the ziyarah of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam and receive the shafa'ah of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam. Originators of this majlis and the spiritual journeys team and all of those who have joined us as part of our family tonight, raise them with Muhammad and Al Muhammad. Our marhumeen who instilled in us the love of Imam al Husayn alayhi salam, raise them with Imam al Husayn alayhi salam. For those who have hajat tonight, and I'm sure all of you have something deep down you hope is answered, something that changes in your life on a personal level. Raise your hands and with the tear that is near your eye, ask for your hajah. You're in the land of Karbala next to Sayyid al-Shuhada and Abul Fadl. Where better can you be? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ. ما شاء الله. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ. 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 We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of your salawat.